Welcome to Hallway Conversations with Ed Leaders, where your hosts Chris, Jeff, and Mark bring you behind-the-scenes insights from the front lines of education. Chris, Jeff, and Mark are seasoned education leaders who provide coaching and expertise to support school districts. Together, they walk the halls with top educational leaders, diving into candid discussions about the challenges, topics, and innovations shaping schools today. From pressing issues to transformative solutions, their conversations are insightful, unfiltered, and packed with practical advice. Get ready for real talk with real leaders who are shaping the future of education. Whether you're in the classroom, the boardroom, or tuning in from home, come away with strategies and ideas you can apply on your own educational journey. Now, let's join Chris, Jeff, and Mark for another enlightening episode of Hallway Conversations with Ed Leaders.
Welcome to Hallway Conversations with Ed Leaders podcast. I'm Chris Galloway. I'm a longtime education leader and currently coach of superintendents and principals and anyone who wants to listen to me.
I am Jeff Price. I used to be a principal, and now I've got a job with a really long title. But what I do is I work with districts and help them out, and I do some coaching and I do a little podcasting now.
Hey y'all, this is Mark Gunthu, longtime administrator, currently supporting our district staff and of course our teachers.
So we had an opportunity not too long ago. We were all in the same conference, and I think it was all three of us, or was it just me and Mark?
It was all three of us.
We were listening to some people debrief about some things we had seen that day, and the conversation was around these big grand plans, like 3-5 year plans. And a person who works at the campus level said, look, all of this is great. Like, I get it. It's big. But what if, while you're thinking about this big plan, I have to worry about the realities of my scores, my metrics, my day to day? And as we were like kind of pondering what she said, Mark, you jumped in and said, right, so here's the deal. You've got to have this idea of who's going to do the work of the future and who's going to do the work of the right now. And for me, it was like one of those Zen koans, like where the Buddha holds up a flower and one dude smiles and everybody else is like, what? I felt like that was really deep. And so I wanted to see if you could expand on that and see how badly I paraphrased your line too.
Yeah, so I remember the exact moment because the person was really worried about, like, I have some F campuses right now, right? And as much as I want to invest my time in the future, I've got to worry about the work from today. And so I reminded her, or not reminded her, but I shared with her that I had an executive advisor who would always say, some systems have the luxury because they're big enough and they have the capacity to be able to staff where you've got a team of folks working on the work of today, and you've got a team of folks working on the work of tomorrow. And he would talk about how you strike a balance, right? And I think that's great in a bigger district. But in this case, this was a smaller district, maybe a 3A district. And so they barely have enough staff to be a pretty solid central office, right? So they've got some HR folks, they had some curriculum people, they had some people that support PEIMS and technology and all that. But they're not set up to have, a department of transformation, a department of strategy, a department, right, of that future work. And so they're trying to balance that. And so when I shared that, she kind of paused too. And I said, now you may not have the current capacity, but I think this is where if we would have had more time, we start thinking about, so what roles and responsibilities and what structures are we putting in place, or are we going to build so that with our current capacity and our current state, we can do both the work of today and the work of tomorrow.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about, Mark, because I was a superintendent in a district that was a 3A district, small 3A. 800 students, and I didn't have an assistant soup. I had a chief instructional officer, and I had a business person, and that was pretty much it. And so, as a superintendent, and I relied heavily on my principals to be a part of that central office cabinet. And I can see the concern of focusing on the work of tomorrow when you got the work of today that needs to be done, because I think ideally, like you mentioned, the work of today is done on the campuses. The work of tomorrow is done at central office, where they're removed a little bit. At the same time, they support the work of today, but it's at a small percentage of their time versus otherwise. As a superintendent, I remember being pulled away several times to do some of that work of tomorrow, that relationship building, going to Lions Club meetings, going to Rotary Club meetings, going to those type of things that are during the day, going to meetings at our service center and meeting with other superintendents, and especially with superintendents that their districts were contracted to do some of our transportation and our special ed co-op and those type of things, food service. So I can see that, and so that's a great question. I think, can we define what roles that should be, or is it really district dependent? Like, it's up to the district.
Yeah, if you're like on a campus, I think all of us here have been on a turnaround campus. I was on a capital T turnaround campus. Um, and I think, your standard answer for how do you do that, right, is, well, you go, everybody knows it's in the literature. You go for the quick victories and you look at the long term. What does that even mean if you're in the middle of it? Because if you are like, if I don't turn this campus around this year, the board will get replaced. Like that's where we were. And so, yeah, it's tricky because you've also got to do this idea too. How about I'm gonna throw this one out there? If you are only working on the work of today, which is what we are
Mhm.
sort of kind of done here in the state that we're in, this idea of presentism, right? Like what is right here, right in front of me is the most important thing, and I'm gonna get this thing turned around. Well, maybe you barely turn it around and then it's not built to last because you have not even considered what is that going to look like going forward, right?
Mhm.
So there's that. It's like a nesting doll, one of those things.
Well, and if you're working
Uh,
on just the work today, then you're being reactive. When you're
Hmm.
working on the work of tomorrow, you're being proactive.
Hmm. Unless you can try to find a way to say, what we're doing now, like what's my line? What are we going to do? What does that look like on Monday? This is what we're
Right.
going to do Monday. But I also want you to know that next month it will build to that. And I think at a grander scale, maybe that's what we're going for.
this makes me think of sustainability,
Yeah.
right? Especially after a couple years at a turnaround campus, even when you turn it around. I remember having this conversation with a teacher. The campus had done a phenomenal job. They had moved from an F to a B, and the teacher says, I can finally start taking care of myself and I can go to all the doctor's appointments that I wasn't able to do in the last 2 years as we were moving the campus from an F to a B. So I don't have to stay after school anymore.
Mm. Hmm.
And I like felt for her, right? I was like, yes, like yes, you need to take care of yourself, because I know that the work that you all just did in the current system, the way it was set up, wasn't going to be sustainable without some of those after school hours that were going to be required, right? And I also reminded people from that campus that the hard work is actually the work that comes afterwards, and you're
Mm.
already a B and you need to sustain that B. But how do you balance that, right? Um, when people are literally giving it their all to ensure that they are moving that district or that campus from that F to at least that B.
Hmm.
Yeah, you made an excellent point, Mark. We're talking, and this is going off topic just a little bit, but right now we're talking about the organizational systems, right? And doing the work of tomorrow. But really, you have to think of the personal,
Hmm.
take care of myself, that work life balance. Because when you're so caught up in the work, I think about being an administrator, putting a checklist up as a principal on my board and never getting to it, because as soon as I walk in, boom, fire, 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 fire. And then I stay late because I think I got to put out all the fires, and not taken the time to realize that tomorrow the fires are still going to be there. You have
Hmm.
to take care
Hmm.
of yourself. So when it's time to go see your daughter at her first Christmas pageant, this is a real life scenario for me
Hmm.
right now, and not go to another meeting, and taking that time is more important than going to that meeting that can be staffed by someone else. And it took me some time to realize that as an administrator, I can put somebody else on it. I can ask for those teachers who are leaders going through admin programs to step up and take some admin duties, like going to the concert, going to the soccer game where there's not going to be like a football game, or, where it's high needs, where they can go do that and they can learn to be an administrator at the same time as helping myself with that work-life balance, because I have to do the work of tomorrow, which is take care of my family, take care of my health, because if I'm not filling my cup, how can I give to others?
And that goes right to the big picture and like helping people see that direct connection of I am not going to skip my kid's performance so
Yeah.
I can go to this meeting just so I can make a point of me being there, because really what we're looking for is in 3 years we're going to be a finely oiled machine. I
Hmm.
hate using machine, but we're going to be like, we're just this organization that rolls, and we know that people can step in for each other. And so I'm going to start that process now. I'm going to allow someone else to come in for me so that I can be me, so that I have the energy to work in 2 weeks. You've grown, you've got somebody now who has been in a position and has a little depth. Now you've got a bench, right? If you're sending an AP or a one of your teachers, lead teachers. But I think it's that connection to I'm going to do this now because it's going to pay off later. But it's you gotta have that big picture. You got to see that though and live it, and that's so hard. Where you're talking about those fires too.
Hmm.
Yeah. So how do we operationalize this for people, right? Because we
Right.
know our listeners are in the trenches right now.
Hmm.
And we know our listeners who want those coaching moves. And so I think one of the things that for me comes to mind is, we talk about investments, and we talk about investments of typically resources, right? Money and funding. And so in a budget crunch, right? Looking at your staff and saying, here's what's important today, right? And if I want to get to tomorrow and I still want to be able to do all this work, what is an investment that I have to do right now to make sure that I'm setting up the system in that way?
Hmm.
Yeah, I can tell you what I did. So I mentioned in a previous podcast about being on a campus with 3,700 kids. Well, we had 240 staff members. We had 10 administrators, but we were so overwhelmed we couldn't get into classrooms, because we had so many ARDs, so many 504s, discipline, and we had our alpha that deal with the discipline. So what we did is we created a pipeline for administrative pipeline for teachers who are going through the program or thinking about going through the program. And once you put it out there that, hey, we have this opportunity for you to do the work of today and learn what it means to be an administrator and be trained how to do these things, then you can come out of the classroom, or you can, on your planning period, come and do like 45 minutes of discipline and start clearing that discipline queue for me.
Hmm.
And while you're doing that, I'm going to be in the classroom. Or while you're doing that, I'll be working on those priorities. Or while you're doing it, so yeah, I'll do the things I have to do legally, like the ARDs and 504s, but you can have another teacher come out and actually teach them how to do discipline, and teach them how to call a parent, teach them how to meet with a kid, how to counsel the kid, how to get the kid back in class, those type of things. And so, like it was mentioned earlier by Jeff, you're building that capacity, you're building that pipeline, and you're securing your future. And so we're talking about a succession plan. That's your succession plan. Instead of having to go outside to hire somebody, now
Hmm.
you have someone you've seen in the trenches do the work. And they not only did the work of today as an administrator, but they also were successful in the classroom as a teacher. And when they put in that work and they learn to do that, I think it's fantastic. That was my pathway to become an administrator. And when we implemented that program, it helped relieve our plate, so we could go home at night. And some of those teachers who wanted to volunteer would stay behind and work those games and those activities.
Hmm. Hmm. There's also this notion too of like you've got your people growing, right? And then as the campus leader sort of setting that up, or the district leader, can you work it like this notion of the just in time professional development, right? Like this is the end goal. We want this. So the very first thing we want to do is this. And I know that it'll link to that, but not holding that close to the vest and not like, I'm just going to keep this a secret. And I don't want anybody to know where we're going. Just tell everybody in 2 years we're going to be here, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to do this, and it seems tiny, but we want to get real good at this. It's like the foundational skills, right? You're building a pyramid almost. And I think as you're developing your talent, you're developing their understanding of how all of these things actually fit and they're coherent, right? So you're creating coherence. I think you could also call it like that's talking about your why. But like another way to put that maybe is like there is a coherent plan, there's a coherent structure. This talent development that you're doing is also developing our plan too, right?
Mhm.
I think the other thing of, we're sometimes we get so caught up in the now, right? And I need to do this right now. And so if you take just a little bit more time to say, okay, how can I do this now? But if I really want to make this stick, instead of doing this now, what's the next move?
Hmm.
So that one, I'm not just improving instruction or whatever it is right now, but I'm just gonna stretch. I'm just gonna stretch us a little bit more, and we're gonna do this instead because that is what's sustainable.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
so I think even in pausing, right, and saying as you're creating your current plan for next week or next semester, right, we're about to have a semester break to say, okay, I could do this next semester. Or if we plan and say, okay, what about next year? How might that little move make a little bit of a difference? And that's
Mhm.
what makes it sustainable,
Hmm.
right?
So you're talking about strategic leadership, really. I mean, being strategic about what you can focus on now and knowing that the stuff for tomorrow, that future stuff is important, you have to actually schedule it out, right? Because if you
Hmm.
don't, you get caught up in the day-to-day operations and you focus on that. So I think, the coaching move of finding people that want to take on that stuff that you can relinquish and help build their capacity and teach them how to do it. But there's a coaching move that one of my former soups did for our 3 to 5 year plan is she opened it up to the entire district leaders, assistant principals, instructional coaches, central office staff, who is passionate about these priorities. You're now going to be the gatekeeper for that. And so we had assistant principals that were willing to take that on. And you don't force it. I think as a superintendent and a leader, you don't force it on the people you think should be doing it. You open it up and you allow people to step up and take on because they know what their capacity is, right?
Hmm.
We
Hmm.
have certain people in certain roles that have more to give, and then we have certain people in certain roles that are already tapped out. And so knowing that and not burning people out and allowing other people to step up because those APs want to be principals one day. So they know taking on a district project is going to help them. And I think we have a responsibility as leaders to help them get there.
So here's a thing right tied in with that and the strategic thought is if you've got somebody that's passionate about a project, knows where they're going with that project, right? So they own it. That is theirs and they are great. If somebody comes in and says, "Oh, the data is not quite where we want mid-year. We're going to do something totally different." You've got that passionate leader who's bought in. Yeah, we're not selling cars. Who's really committed to that, saying, "Wait, wait, wait. Why are we ditching this? What can we do? We're keeping this. That is not this is not coming off the table because we're going this way in 3 years. How do we adjust what we have now? We're not going to add anything new. We're not going to go to some conference and go, ooh, that's cool. We're not going to go to some retreat and get a third or fourth coach and say, we'll just do it that way. You've got that passionate leader who's developing it and who's going to almost protect it, right? From
Yeah.
from each other and yourself in some way.
Avoid the
And that, and
shiny
that,
objects.
Yes, yes.
that's what I was thinking, Jeff, when I said, like, you're going to have to act anyway, right? And then just like take that pause. And before we say, here's our immediate next step, try to anticipate what would be then the step after that, because
Hmm.
forcing yourself to think to not the immediate next step but the step after that is what gets you to think a little more long term. And I guarantee you that it's probably not about I gotta hire somebody else,
Yeah.
right? It's
How-
probably like, oh, if we change the system in this way and we
Yeah.
start doing this instead of just start doing this thing that we were going to do, that's how you make it sustainable, and that's how you begin to build the work of tomorrow.
How about this? I'm going to jump in, Chris, because I want to get I know you're going to have a passion on this one. Don't you, how many times have you been in a position as a leader and people that are listening in leadership roles where you just have to say, nope, we're not changing it. Why? Because it's
Mm,
going to work. Well, I don't think it's going to work. Not really interested in that right now. I mean, I really want your input. We're not changing. This is the way we're going, right? How many times have
yeah.
you had to do that?
Preach, preach.
Yeah.
Because here's the thing. 3 to 5 years. That's why those
Yeah.
plans are three to
Yeah.
five years because it takes 3 to 5 years to actually have sustainable change. And the problem is we sit there and we see it doesn't work in the first 6 months or it doesn't work in the first year, and we're ready to cut it. But there's always an implementation dip with anything
Yep.
you do. There's an implementation dip. You have to ride that wave, but when you add to it or you change it, I mean, you can make small tweaks here and there when you see a problem. But other than that, you got to roll with it and give it time. Let
Hmm.
it percolate. If it don't percolate,
Hmm.
then you're gonna miss out on what the potential could be. Gotta let it roll. Everything. If you look at all the research, 3 to 5 years, even businesses, 3 to 5 years, right? When you start a business, 3 to 5 years before you start making money. How many times have we heard that with anything? Scores, changing curriculum, 3 to 5 years.
Hmm.
Even in Texas, we have a big curriculum change right now that's being pushed out, and these districts are in their second, third year. We're finally starting to see some things move. But when you got that first year, they want to change. It's not what it is. New teachers takes 3 years for a new
Yep.
teacher to hit their groove. Come on, guys,
And if
get
you're in a
with it.
and if you're at a campus level, or any level, there are times when you're going to have both sides saying no. Like you're going to
Yeah,
have to fend off people above. No, you need to change it. You
yeah,
need to back off. And then you've got people that you're having to do the work. I really don't think it's working. It's going to work. So it's like a you've
yeah,
got to, how am I going to get this person to go with me, and how am I going to get that person to just step back? I almost said a bad word.
yeah.
But you know what
We can be explicit sometimes.
Yeah. Well, so having said that, Jeff, I think, as that leader of that initiative, especially if we're talking to school leaders or even district leaders, right, who are protecting, right, whatever it is
I
that they
mean?
need to protect at the moment, thinking about, okay, what's, again, the work of today has to move. So what's the tweak then that could happen,
Hmm. Hmm.
right? It's
Hmm.
it's mid course corrections, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
What's the tweak that can happen right now to make sure that we do get the work of today done while still protecting the idea, the thought, the goal, like the bigger project. And again, that doesn't cost you anything,
Yeah.
yeah.
right?
Yep.
Think
I'm
you
gonna.
make a priority, right? You make it a priority and you integrate it. Like you make sure we're working with the district right now. It's doing fantastic with this. They're integrating the work of tomorrow with the work of today,
Mhm.
and that's making the difference.
It's almost like, okay, if we're in San Antonio and I'm driving to Austin, I get to three-fourths of the way there. Kyle, traffic starts in Kyle. Nobody knows that's their official town motto. If you live in Kyle, great, you know it's true. You're not going to hit traffic and go, well, forget it. Let's just go home. We should
Right.
go to Houston. We should go to Houston. Like, no, you're not going to do that. You're going to like, where else can we go? Is there a side road, or do we just sit in traffic because we know eventually it's going to pass out? Pass. I'm going to pass out. We're going to pass through, right? And I wonder if that's
Yeah.
kind of the same thought, right? Like, no, we're going to Austin, right? That's where I want to go. So,
Austin's the only place that I drive to with my GPS that the time gets longer as I get
yeah,
closer. I don't understand it. It doesn't make any sense. I know that if I set my GPS and it says it's going to take me an hour and a half, it's really going to be an hour and 45 minutes.
right, right.
Yeah. So I don't know if we answered any questions today, but I do know that I think we gave some coaching moves, and I think it's really dependent on your district and your situation. But ultimately, and please correct me if I'm wrong, we need to make it a priority. We need to both of them, the work of today and the work of the future. And we need to figure out which resources, and resources we mean people mostly, can step up and help out in each of those scenarios, and don't be scared to let go. I know some people don't want to let
Mm,
go of some work.
hmm.
And
Hmm.
as a leader, one thing I heard a long time ago, and I think this is tremendous, if someone can do it 80% as good as you, then it's okay to let go of it.
Hmm.
And that's a hard thing to think about, right? I could do it better. Yeah, you probably can, but you can't do everything. So you got to let it go. So am I missing anything with what we talked about today?
If you're listening to this, and I think maybe that might be your job, is to be the one that says, how are you gonna, like, ask that question? How are you gonna work on the work of today without looking at the work of tomorrow? How are you gonna do both? Because you got to do both, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
think just to make one thing really clear, what we kept saying over and over, and I think it's not just us, right? But we know this in practice, is when you build your team, when you build your bench, you're able to do both.
Mhm.
And so because we believe in coaching, right? Because we know that that works, invest in how you coach others and then set them free.
100%. I love that. I'd love to end on that, but I have one more thing to say. I feel like that we didn't address why it's important to work on the work for tomorrow, and because people would think it's tomorrow, and we talked about being proactive versus reactive, but I think when you work on the work of tomorrow, it helps the work for today,
Yeah.
because
It's this.
tomorrow will be today, right?
It. How about this? It's the same work. Like
Yeah.
we're making it different. It is the same work. What we
Yeah.
do today is leads to tomorrow. I think is what you're getting at. Also, nice use of the I statement in that
Oh
one. I want to give you props for that.
yeah. And Mark, do you have anything profound to close us out with, since I took away your profoundness?
No, those were my last words.
All right, man. Well, we appreciate our listeners. We definitely want you to reach out to us. If you have any questions or thoughts about topics, please send them to our email, which is questions@edthoughtpartners.com. That's questions@edthoughtpartners.com, as well as visit our website at www.edthoughtpartners.com. That's www.edthoughtpartners.com. Check out our YouTube channel, which hopefully will have this podcast up real soon.
I'm wearing a
And
collared shirt for the
you
YouTube.
dressed
Yeah,
up for this.
yeah.
Me and Mark are rolling in t-shirts.
Jeans and Vans though, but that's all right.
All right, guys. Well, we appreciate everybody, and hopefully we'll have some more podcasts come out. We should have one more before Christmas, and if not, and if you don't hear us before then, have a Merry Christmas, and we hope you have a happy holidays as well.
See y'all soon.
Bye.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of Hallway Conversations with Ed Leaders. If you found today's discussion enlightening, please subscribe to our podcast and share it with fellow educators and leaders who can also benefit from these conversations. Are you looking to enhance your leadership skills? Visit our website at the Center for Strategic Leadership. There, you can register for our nationally accredited coaching certification program. This program offers you an opportunity to earn a board-certified coach certification and become a strategic leadership coach, empowering you to make a significant impact in your educational community. Don't miss this chance to elevate your leadership. Join us and transform your educational leadership journey today. Until next time, keep leading, keep learning, and keep inspiring. See you in the next episode of Hallway Conversations with Ed Leaders.